Hello guys, I am back from another video on the video about deku was Typhon. So, in the last video deku after Izuku woke up and also gets ready to go to the shrine where Izuku met Tamano no Mai, Izuku gets there and meets up with Yamato no Orochi taking the form of a young boy, maybe 8-ish in age, the appearance of the boy, and finally Izuku met his other companion or acquaintance, being Shuten Doji, taking the form of an old man, maybe by maybe about in his 30s. So, when they get there to the moon, Izuku sees Artemis and also Nyx and Erebus fighting against the god of Japanese mythology, specifically the moon, Tsukuyomi, and the so-called goddess of the moon or the queen of the moon in the Bible. So, after a bit of fighting, well, it turns out that this girl or this goddess's name was Astarte. So, after a bit of fighting against her with Izuku tells everybody her true name. This girl, also known as Astarte, her true name or her new name, apparently after the church basically came back and also reformed some of the other religions like paganism and changed all of their gods and goddesses into monsters and demons. Izuku realizes her true name as Astaroth, the Great Duke of Hell. So, after she was told of this brand new name, or her true name, she transformed into a demon. But before we actually get the true fight between Izuku and Astarte, or Astaroth, we move to a different perspective, being the perspective of Ares and his gang, being the children of Ares. And apparently, he's actually a really nice guy. He actually originally wanted to become a god of agriculture, but his father, Zeus, decided to turn him into a god of war. So, after a while of talking to these children that his gang accidentally killed their mother for, Izuku, or should I say Ares, I meant Ares actually, Ares decides to go to the room where Hephaestus usually stays. He basically creates several weapons and prosthetics, specifically prosthetic arms, legs, and like any other body part. As well, they don't really have a good relationship because after all, Ares did steal away his wife. Well, or at least his ex-wife, being Aphrodite. And yes, Aphrodite used to be the ugliest god's wife, which is crazy. I know. I never really known about that since I was since I was a kid. So apparently they don't really have a good relationship because the whole stealing his wife thing. But Ares wants to apologize and says that he was sorry, and also because he wasn't the one that seduced her. In fact, she was the one that's seducing him. So, after a bit of talking, well, Ares, he's still a pretty nice guy, but unfortunately, Hephaestus doesn't, he doesn't really, promise him that he's still forgiven him for his actions, but he somewhat trusts him now. Kind of. As in kind of like the size of a grain of sand, basically. So, after that we move to another perspective, being the perspective of, well, wait for a second, Athena, or used to be called Artemis, because apparently in some mythologies or some iterations, apparently in some iterations of the story of how Athena was born, apparently in some things, apparently Artemis and Athena were supposed to be one god, but they were split after a few centuries. So I decided to put that in the story. Artemis is actually a title. So Athena is now a vigilante working as a kind of Stain situation, but except she protects the innocent as well. So, after seeing the battle ensue with Izuku fighting against Astaroth, she joins the battle and joins up with Izuku, saying that she doesn't want to fight him anymore, but instead she wants to fight her father, Zeus, and punish him for his actions. So, yeah, and we basically ended it off right there. So, let's talk about what happens next. So, Erebus and Nyx also join in, saying that they actually want to fight Zeus, for after all, they basically became slaves of him. So, also Artemis joins up, because she wants to get revenge on his father. Her father. For using her for several reasons. One of them is, take a guess what? And for Tsukuyomi, he just wants all of them to get out of his, turf. Because he thinks of them as mongrels. And you're wondering why I decided to call his um, little attribute being that he calls everybody a mongrel. Because I actually imagine him being like a Japanese version of Gilgamesh. Because apparently in the actual stories or in some like mythologies about him, apparently he's actually pretty prideful and also prideful against people that don't have good manners. So yeah, that's what I imagine him being like. So when they all charge at Astaroth, Astaroth creates pillars made out of fire. As when Izuku starts dodging them, Artemis starts shooting out these bows, and not really bows, more like arrows that are basically in the shape of like the moon, or at least the crescent moon. For wait for a second, Nyx and Erebus, they basically transform into a black, almost shadowy type dragon. As she starts charging towards Astaroth and bites off one of her legs. As for Athena, she uses the Aegis, which is the special shield that was given to her by, Perseus back in the day, after slicing off the head of what's his name? Not slicing off the head of that, um, specifically Medusa, because in the legend, you basically know if you know mythology. So, after she puts off the Aegis, she creates a shield for everybody, basically protecting them for one single attack from her, being Astaroth. Wait for a second. Tsukuyomi will create a gigantic blades of the earth of the sun, because after all he was the creator of the moon in his mythology. So he starts creating a blade made out of the moon and throws it at Izuku. After Izuku grabs it, Izuku lops the head of Astaroth. After that fight, Astaroth turns into moon dust. As in moon dust, I mean like literal sand from the moon. After that, she cries, saying that she only wanted to fight and return to becoming a goddess of the moon, so her worshippers won't feel shame. Because another name for, wait for a second. Another name for Astarte was Astoreth, which means, it's combining her like name with the Hebrew word for, shame, which is Boshet. Even though it sounds like something else, but Boshet is basically the Hebrew word for shame. So combining these two creates, a start shame. So he said, or she said this. She said this to Izuku in his face. Please, make my followers feel happy again. Make them feel proud of their, religion, their ideals. Make them feel no longer afraid. Make them feel like they're people. As they disappear, as she disappears in black smoke, the last of her remains her demonic side disappearing forever. Izuku felt that and tells everybody to stop fighting because it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters right now is defeating Zeus. As one of them being, wait for a second, Artemis says this. I guess you are correct. I mean, he was a bastard in life, and he was a bastard to you, right? As he says this. Correct. And that is why I'm planning to beat him down and make him pay for what he have done. I want him to suffer. As for... Wait for a second. Athena says this. Yes, I used to call my father a hero for defeating you, but now I consider him as a villain, and as the goddess of heroes, I will protect this land. I will protect this brand new world, and protect them. Protect them from my disgusting, deplorable father. As for Tsukuyomi, he says this. I think your strength is enough. Well then, I will gladly join you into your fight. Your fight against this Zeus character. As for Nyx and Erebus, they agree. And they agree to join Izuku in their fight against Zeus. As for the other three gods, or should I say, the three yokai, the three most powerful yokai, Orochi, oh wait for a second, Yamata Orochi, or just Orochi, just gonna call him that, Shuten Doji, and Tamano no Mai. They join Izuku to fight against Zeus. They finally have the firepower to finally defeat them, but the only problem right now is, well, you know who. Ares, his gang, the children of Ares, are still currently, well, terrorizing the sea. As for one of them being, well, Tsukimi, he says this. If he wants us, or at least wants them to join our side, I think it's better if you try and act more like a brute, just like them, Mr. Typhon. As Izuku just says this. I mean, that actually doesn't sound like a bad idea, but saying it like that sounds a bit weird. As he says this. Either way, I think it's better if you just act like more of a plebeian or whatever, so you can finally defeat this Zeus. Zeus, the so-called god of the Greek pantheon, I believe, as they say this. Yeah, that's where I'm from. As he says this. Wait for a second, sorry about that. Sorry. So, after a bit of talking, Izuku tells all of them that he's about to leave because currently there's going to be class tomorrow. As one of them being, well, Erebus says this. Wait, you go to school? As Izuku just says this. Obviously, because of my brand new form, I have to change my schedule a little bit. So instead of destroying things, I decided to go to school. One of them being Artemis says this. Okay, guess you can leave now. As for the other three, well, monsters or the yokai or the top three best yokai, they say this. Alright, goodbye. And I hope that we join the, battle that's going to ensue very soon. Or should I say tomorrow. So, Izuku leaves. As when he's leaving, Izuku goes back to class 1A. Or just the dorms. So, when Izuku gets there, apparently, Izuku saw two people. One of them being Ares for some reason, and, well, Hephaestus. As Izuku grabs or creates a blade made out of his arm, he says this. What are you doing here, Ares? As Ares says this. Wait, Typhon, I'm really sorry about what happened many years ago, but I'm not I'm not doing that whole gang thing anymore. I disbanded. I swear. As for Hephaestus, he says this. Yeah, he disbanded that gang many, well, hours ago. So don't worry, we're not gonna fight you. As Izuku just says this. Are you sure? As they say this. I swear. As for, well, Ares, he says this. Well, I don't really, care all about, you know, joining Zeus. After all, he was a bastard. And I really wanted to become a god of agriculture, but he decided to turn me into a god of war instead. As Izuku just says this. How about you? Oh wait, let me guess. As he says this. Yeah, I want to get revenge for him, turning me into this, and also using me for creating these weapons of destruction. As Izuku just says this. Very well. So, after, well, like a few hours, they made it to the principal's office. As Principal Nezu explains why Ares and Hephaestus are here. Apparently, they want to join the war. So, Izuku accepts them as Izuku tells Ares to start making armor, and just armor. While for Ares, he's going to be training the other, like, soldiers. Or should I say, children of his. So, after that, Izuku starts moving back to the dorms. So, when Izuku gets to the dorms, Izuku sees, weirdly, people. They look similar to the four girls, or should I say, Momo, Ochako. Not really Ochako because, she's an orphan. Bakugo, I meant, and Todoroki. As one of them being, Bakugo's parents, being Mitsuki, says this. Why did you make my daughter pregnant? As Izuku just says this. Excuse me, what? As Izuku looks over as one of them, or one person, or one of these people touches him right on the, well, shoulder. As Izuku looks, like, at the back of him, or behind him, wait for a second, Izuku sees Bakugo with a pretty big stomach. Also, Todoroki and, well, Momo. Izuku's heart sank, as one of them being, Momo's father says this. Huh, I guess your mission is finally fulfilled. Now, Izuku, well, Midoriya, or should I just call you Mr. As Izuku just says this, just call me, Izuku, as he says this. Very well, Izuku, or should I say my brand new, well, son-in-law. Izuku gets that from his ear, like, he basically whispered it into his ear, as Izuku just says this. Wait, that means as, well, Momo said this. Yeah, we're going to be married, so... As for, well, Bakugo's parents, Mitsuki just grabs him by the, well, collar and says this. Why did you make my daughter pregnant? Can you explain why? She starts grinding her teeth. As Bakugo said this. What are you doing, you old hag? As she says this. I told you to shut up, you damn brat. As both of them started fighting. As for, Endeavor being the mother of, Todoroki. Wait for a second, again. So, Endeavor leans closer to Izuku as she says this. Thank you for making my child pregnant. Especially because you're strong. You're not really a quirk user, more like a monster, but you're pretty strong, so I'll allow it. And I guess you can say that you're kind of like, well, how do I say it? Todoroki's going to be your mistress. Kind of. As Izuku's heart sank as well, even deeper. Like, probably to his stomach. As for Todoroki, she starts blushing as she starts coming closer to Izuku. As she says this. So, Izuku, what are we gonna be calling the baby? Izuku's like, well, starts blushing a lot as Izuku looks over and sees Ochako. And also, oof, Mr. Aizawa, or should I say Miss Aizawa, because after all, she's a girl in this universe. As she says this. So, you made your own, well, adopted sister pregnant. As she says this. Oh, come on, it was an accident. As Izuku just sinks. Like, his literal, like, heart just instantly sank to the bottom of hell. As Izuku's face turns pale, and Izuku drops to the ground. As everybody was confused on what happened to Izuku, Izuku starts being brought to the, well, nurse's office to, well, cool off. So, all of the girls that Izuku, last night, not really last night, it's more like last day. So, they go into the same room where Izuku is, which is the infirmary, as they started talking. Talking about how they're pregnant and they're a bit afraid about, giving birth. Especially because they're 18. Izuku's technically 18 as well, so please don't say in the comments that it's kind of wrong, but at least they're 18 and not like, something else. And it's not helping in the Philippines that the birth rate here is basically like, skyrocketing. Or at least back then, because back in the day, people didn't wear, rubbers. Take a guess why. So, after a while of talking, Ochako said this. It kind of feels weird actually being pregnant by, Izuku, because I kind of refer to him as like, a brother. As for, well, Momo, she says this. I don't really care all about, well, Izuku's well-being. At least it's after all my job. As for, well, Todoroki, she says this. Yeah, my mother has been trying to find, like, a perfect, suitable, husband for me. But when she saw Izuku, and after I was told that I was pregnant, and also telling her that it was Izuku, well, she was jumping for joy for some reason. My mother. That stupid old hag. As for Bakugo, she was like, well, unusual. Instead of being this fiery self, she was kind of, well, kind of awkward. As one of them being Ochako says this. Hey, Bakugo, are you okay? As she says this. Do you think I'm okay? I mean, seriously, I'm pregnant. I mean, it's kind of weird being pregnant for the first time. And it's not helping that I'm pregnant with, the child of the so-called father of all monsters, and he used to have a wife, as they're quite, well, nervous in the future, because after all, they're gonna become heroes, and if they get, well, and because of their, pregnancy, or because they're pregnant, they can't become heroes right now, so they're gonna be staying in the infirmary for a while. So, after a while of talking, well, actually, just wait until the end, because this is actually going to be important. So, Izuku wakes up as he says this. What happened? Wait, no. Are they pregnant? Please be some sort of dream. Please be a nightmare. Please be a nightmare. As one of the girls, being Ochako, opens the curtains, and Izuku sees her belly being, pudgy. Not really pudgy, more like big. As Izuku's face turns white, as Izuku just says this. It's actually true. I didn't make you pregnant. Why? As two girls, well, come into the room, as it's being, well, wait for a second. Two of these girls were Jiro and, well, Tamaki. As Tamaki says this. Wait, that means you and those four girls are now, as for Jiro, she says this. Did you literally just do that with all four of these girls? Are you that disgusting? As Izuku just says this. No, it's not like that. It was just an accident. As all of the girls say this. Yeah, it was, the heat of the moment. As for Momo, instead of saying that, she says this. It's not really in the heat of the moment, it's more like it's my job to do that. As, well, let's just say, well, Jiro was even more angry. And let's just say it spread to the whole school after that. Yep, Izuku's life has turned to the worst. So, every time when Izuku goes to, well, Class 1A, every single girl starts looking at him and starts whispering. Yeah, it's basically like the worst time for Izuku right now. It's absolutely terrifying for Izuku. So, Izuku gets back to the dorms as Izuku starts resting beside a book. A book about babies. Because Izuku is going to be a father very soon. Izuku was terrified. But Izuku just sighs and decides to get some rest. So, Izuku goes to sleep. So, if the rest of you are finally at the end here, well, it's a bit of a, you know, a hard time for me right now. Especially with some of my what ifs. Specifically the animatronic what if. Because I'm planning to make a animatronic what if being based off Five Nights at Freddy's being an old fandom that I used to be in. Even though I still like it right now, I used to like it like super much. But I'm not as well a hardcore fan of like Five Nights at Freddy's anymore. But I still love the series either way. So, um, because you're at the end here, I want all of you to, well, you know, the ship for Izuku in that what if. Because I don't really have an idea. Izuku is technically like he died during, well, when he was 15, when he was stuffed by a mysterious killer. I want all of you guys to pick like a ship for Izuku. It can be any ship, like for example, like Bakugo or something like that. Just any ship, because I don't really have an idea for Izuku's ship for that what if. And also for the mercenary what if, I don't really have an idea for his ship as well. So I want all of you to pick a ship for him as well. And also for the, for the other what if, which I kind of forgotten the name of. Let me just check. What if Deku was the Grim Reaper? I also don't have a ship for that as well. Because most of the time when I think of like what ifs, I don't really think of the ship until I realize it. So I want all of you to pick a ship for those three what ifs after all, because those are the ships that are basically most voted. And I don't really have ideas for the ships yet. So I want all of you to pick the ship. Just comment down below in this video and please for God's sakes, because I'm kind of like afraid about the what if or the what ifs, because I really want to make a ship for them immediately. So yeah. So I hope you liked the video. Comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.